The voicemail was only 7 seconds long. No breathing, no background noise, just a voice that sounded exactly like mine saying, "Don't come back. It already knows you." I deleted it. Then my phone rang again. I hadn't been back to Gray Ridge in 12 years, not since the night my mother disappeared and the town decided to forget it ever happened. Gray Ridge, Illinois, population 3,412, according to the last sign I passed on Route 19, a number that never seemed to change, no matter how many people left or failed to return. I told myself this trip was about paperwork, about selling the house, about closing a chapter. That was a lie. The truth was simpler and worse. I'd started dreaming about Gray Ridge again. Every night for the past month, the same dream. I'm standing in the middle of Main Street. The shops are open, lights on, but there are no people, no cars, no sound. Then the street signs begin to change, letters sliding, rearranging themselves, until every sign reads the same word, remember. And then I wake up with the taste of metal in my mouth. So when the lawyer called and said the town was finally releasing my mother's property, I didn't hesitate. I packed my car, turned off my apartment lights in Chicago, and drove south. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. That felt important. Gray Ridge looked exactly the same. That was the first thing that scared me. Same gas station with the flickering open sign, same diner with the cracked window shaped like a lightning bolt, same clock tower stuck permanently at 3:17. Time didn't move here. It settled. As I crossed the town line, my phone lost signal. Not no service, just nothing. The bars vanished as if they'd never existed. I rolled my window down. The air smelled flat, like rain that never fell. The house waited at the end of Birch Lane, pressed against the forest. The trees behind it were too even, too orderly, as if someone had planned them instead of nature. The key was still under the third step. I stood there longer than I should have before unlocking the door. The air inside wasn't stale. It was preserved. White sheets covered the furniture. No dust, no decay. On the kitchen counter sat my mother's mug. A faint blue ring dried inside it. Someone had been here, or something had been careful. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch, eyes open, listening to the house breathe. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the clock tower chimed. 1, 2, 3. Then silence. I waited for the fourth bell that never came. Instead, I heard footsteps outside, slow, deliberate, repeating. They stopped in front of the door. 3 polite knocks followed. I didn't move. A voice spoke through the wood. "Evan," it said. My chest tightened. It was my mother's voice. "You left something here." Morning didn't so much as arrive as switch on. The sky brightened without color shift, like a screen adjusting brightness. Across the street, Mrs. Calder watered her lawn. She looked exactly the same as she had when I was a kid. "Oh," she said, smiling, "you came back." Then softer, "You shouldn't have." At the diner, the coffee was cold the moment it touched my lips. The waitress leaned close and whispered, "Did you hear the knock last night?" Before I could answer, she stepped away like she said nothing at all. At the town archive, the clerk told me most old records were lost in a fire. "What fire?" I asked. He frowned, paused. "I don't remember." That word again, remember. Every clock read 3:17. Every conversation looped. By afternoon, I understood the rule. The town remembered faces, not events. People, not reasons. In the basement, behind the furnace, I found a door I didn't remember. Bolted shut from the outside, scratched deeply from the inside. That night, the knocking returned earlier. The voice laughed, in my voice. The room behind the basement door was small and airless. A chair, a table, a tape recorder, a notebook. My handwriting covered the pages. If you are reading this, it has already started again. Dates circled back on themselves, sentences repeated with slight variations. The town does not kill you, it teaches you to stay. The tape crackled to life. It learns you, my voice whispered. Your face, your habits, your voice. When someone leaves, it fills the gap. That's how the number never changes. Above me, something moved, heavy, slow, practicing the sound of my footsteps.
I didn't go to sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with the lights off, watching my reflection in the dark window. Every time I shifted in my chair, the reflection shifted a fraction of a second too late. At some point, I realized the sound behind the walls had stopped. That scared me more than the noise. When something learns enough, it doesn't need to practice anymore. The basement door wasn't in my memory. I stood in front of it for a long time, hand resting on the cold metal handle, trying to convince myself it had always been there. The paint around the frame was newer than the rest of the basement. Careful, intentional. The bolt was on the outside. That meant whatever had been locked inside had not chosen to be there. I broke the bolt with a crowbar I found behind the furnace. The sound echoed too loudly, as if the basement was smaller than it should have been. The air that escaped smelled old, not rotten, stored. The room was barely larger than a closet. No windows, no vents, just a chair, a small table, and a tape recorder. On the table lay a notebook. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was mine. The first page read, "If you are reading this, it has already started again." My pulse thudded in my ears as I turned the pages. Dates repeated, days looped. Entries contradicted each other, then corrected themselves. Some pages were calm, others were frantic. One sentence appeared again and again, written darker each time. The town does not kill you, it teaches you to stay. The last entry ended abruptly. I hear it walking. It sounds like... The rest of the page was torn out. Behind the notebook was a cassette tape. A handwritten label was stuck to it. Play when you forget. I stared at the tape for a long time before pressing play. Static filled the room. Then my voice, not calm, not controlled, panicked. "It learns you," the voice whispered. "Your habits, your face, your voice. It doesn't need imagination. It just copies." A breath. When someone leaves, something else fills the space. That's how the number stays the same. Another pause. "If you're hearing this, you came back." The tape clicked softly. "I'm sorry." Something shifted above me. Not footsteps, weight. The kind of sound a person makes when they stop pretending to be light. I shut off the recorder and stood perfectly still. The sound moved, slowly, directly above the basement stairs, listening. I didn't stay in the house after that. I drove through town with no destination, watching faces through the windshield. People waved, smiled, nodded. They all recognized me. None of them asked why I was back. At the edge of town, I found the old playground. The swings moved gently, though there was no wind. I remembered playing there as a kid. I also remembered something else now. A woman screaming, not loudly, muffled, from underground. The memories came back in pieces, not all at once. They slipped in when I wasn't looking. I remembered my mother arguing with someone in the kitchen, her voice low, urgent. I remembered her telling me not to answer the door no matter what I heard. I remembered the knock that night. 3 polite taps. I remembered a voice that wasn't hers, trying very hard to be. I went to the diner again. The waitress was there, wiping down the counter. I asked her how long she'd lived in Grey Ridge. She said, "All my life." "Do you ever think about leaving?" I asked. Her hand froze for just a second. Then she smiled. "Why would I do that?" Her reflection in the chrome behind the counter smiled a moment later. The archive clerk finally found something. Not a record, a gap, a missing week, 12 years ago. No news, no logs, no police reports. Just a blank stretch of time where the town should have been paying attention. "That's strange," he said. "Feels like something should be there." He looked up at me. "Did something happen back then?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. That night, I returned to the house. The basement door was open. The chair in the small room was turned to face the stairs. The tape recorder was gone. Upstairs, the phone rang. I hadn't plugged it in. I answered anyway. My mother's voice came through, soft and patient. "You're remembering now," she said. "Good." The line went dead. Behind me, something breathed in time with my own lungs.
I locked myself in the bedroom that night. Not because I thought a lock could stop anything in Grey Ridge, but because the act itself made me feel human, made me feel like I still believed in barriers. I pushed the dresser in front of the door, then I sat on the bed and waited. The house didn't make noise anymore. No footsteps, no breathing, no imitation. Silence had replaced it, and I knew, somehow, that meant it was close. At 3:17 a.m., the clock tower chimed again. 1, 2, 3. The sound lingered longer than before, as if the town itself was listening to the echo. Then the bedroom door handle moved. Not violently, gently, testing. A pause followed. Then my own voice spoke from the other side. "Evan," it said, "you don't need to hide anymore." I pressed my hands over my ears. The voice continued anyway. "We've been waiting for you to remember." Memories pushed forward whether I wanted them or not. I remembered the basement door being installed. I remembered my mother arguing with someone who looked like her but wasn't quite right. I remembered her realizing the truth before anyone else in town. Grey Ridge didn't replace people randomly. It copied them, perfectly enough to pass, imperfectly enough to need practice. That's why it walked. That's why it watched. That's why it knocked politely. The dresser scraped slightly as pressure leaned against it. "You promised," my voice said. "You said you'd stay this time." "I didn't," I whispered. A pause. Then a different voice answered. My mother's. "You always do." The door stopped moving. Footsteps retreated down the hallway. Slow. Satisfied. It knew I wasn't leaving tonight. Morning arrived, dim and colorless. I moved the dresser away and opened the door. The house was reset. The basement door was closed again, bolted. The mug on the counter was clean now. No blue ring, no evidence. I checked my phone. Still no signal. Still no history. It was like the town erased each day as soon as it ended. I drove to the edge of town again. This time I didn't slow down. The road stretched ahead, straight and empty. The trees blurred as I pressed the accelerator. For a moment, hope flared. Then the welcome sign appeared. Grey Ridge. Population 3,112. I slammed the brakes.
The sign stood in front of me. The same sign, same scratches, same faded paint. I hadn't left. I had looped. When I returned to Main Street, people were standing outside their shops, waiting. They watched me drive past with calm expressions, understanding. They knew what I had tried. Mrs. Calder gave me a small, sympathetic wave. The diner was full this time, every booth occupied, everyone eating, everyone quiet. The waitress poured me coffee without asking. It was warm now. I didn't drink it. "You remember now, don't you?" she said softly. "Yes." "That's good," she replied. "That means you're almost ready." "Ready for what?" She tilted her head. "To take your place." The truth settled in my chest like a stone. Gray Ridge wasn't haunted, it was maintained. Every person who left created a gap. Every gap had to be filled. That was the rule. That was how the number stayed the same. My mother had tried to leave with me. The town had chosen her instead. I returned to the house one last time. The basement door was unlocked, waiting. Inside, the chair faced me. Someone had been sitting there recently. The notebook lay open on the table. A new page had been added. The handwriting was mine, but I didn't remember writing it. "You can leave, but someone must stay." Below it, another line. "Choose carefully." The tape recorder was back. I pressed play. My voice spoke, steady and resigned. "If you're hearing this, it means I failed again." A breath. The town can't copy someone who chooses to stay willingly. It needs resistance, fear, memory. Silence. That's the flaw. Upstairs, the front door opened. Footsteps entered. 2 sets, one heavy, one familiar. My mother stood in the doorway of the basement room. She looked tired, relieved. "It's time," she said. Behind her, someone else waited. Someone who looked exactly like me.
The version of me standing behind my mother smiled first. It wasn't wide, it wasn't cruel, it was careful. The kind of smile someone practices in a mirror until it feels natural. "You see now," it said, in my voice, with my rhythm. "That's all we wanted." My mother stepped aside. She didn't look afraid anymore. That frightened me more than anything else. "You don't belong here," I said to the thing wearing my face. It nodded. "I know, but I fit." The basement felt smaller than before. The walls seemed closer, the air heavier. My mother's eyes met mine. "It doesn't hurt," she said quietly. "Not once you stop fighting it." "You stayed," I said, "all these years." She shook her head. "I didn't stay. I was kept. There's a difference." The other me stepped forward. Up close, I could see the imperfections, the blink that lasted a fraction too long, the breath that came half a second late. Practice marks. "It can't copy choice," my recorded voice had said. The flaw. "Let her go," I said. The thing paused. For the first time, uncertainty crossed its face. "That would change the number," it said. "You'll still have one. Me." Silence stretched. I felt the town listening, not through ears,
through memory. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for mine. "You don't have to," she whispered. I smiled at her. "I already did, 12 years ago. I just forgot." The thing stepped back, slowly, carefully, as if stepping away from a cliff. It didn't argue. It didn't threaten. It simply watched, learning. When my mother crossed the basement threshold, the air changed. Lighter, like something exhaled for the first time in years. She climbed the stairs without looking back. At the top, she paused. "Don't let it forget you too fast," she said. Then she was gone. The house settled. The basement door closed on its own. No bolt, no lock, just understanding. Days passed, or maybe they didn't. Time in Grey Ridge was flexible once you stopped measuring it. People waved at me. They smiled the way they always had. But something was different now. They didn't watch me as closely. The footsteps stopped. The knocking never came again. The clock tower chimed 4 times at 3:17. No one commented on it. The diner coffee stayed warm. The waitress forgot my name. That felt like progress. I wrote in the notebook. Not warnings, instructions. Where to look, what to listen for, how to recognize the practice phase. I left the tape recorder blank. No more apologies. Sometimes I stood at the edge of town and watched the road. It still looped, still refused to let anyone leave completely, but it no longer tried to replace them. Grey Ridge learned something new. So did I. On quiet nights, I hear footsteps far away. Not practicing, just walking. Someone else, maybe, starting to remember. When that happens, I leave the porch light on, not as a warning, as a signal. The town still has a population of 3,112, but for the first time, the number feels honest, because this time, I'm not trapped. I'm choosing, and Grey Ridge knows the difference.
The porch light hummed softly behind me. It hadn't been on in years. I didn't remember flipping the switch, but in Grey Ridge, intention mattered more than action. The light stayed on because something needed to see it. The air shifted. Not colder, not warmer. Aware. I felt it before I heard it. A presence at the edge of the road. Not close enough to have footsteps yet. Not far enough to be nothing. Waiting. I stood still. That was important. Movement suggested fear. Stillness suggested choice. The trees along Birch Lane rustled in unison, though there was no wind. Leaves didn't fall. Branches didn't sway independently. They moved like a single thought passing through them. The town was listening again, but differently this time. A shape began to form at the edge of the light. Not a person, not yet. Just a suggestion of one, the way fog sometimes looks like it's considering becoming human. I didn't speak, neither did it. The silence stretched, thick but not threatening, curious rather than hungry. Then, softly, it stepped forward. 1 foot, then another. The sound wasn't wrong anymore. It wasn't copying me. It was choosing its own rhythm. "You're new," I said. The words felt strange leaving my mouth, not because I was afraid, but because no one had ever spoken to it like that before. The shape paused, not frozen, thinking. "I don't remember," it said. The voice wasn't mine, not my mother's, not anyone I recognized. It was rough around the edges, untested. That mattered. "That's okay," I replied. "You're not supposed to, not yet." The porch light flickered once, then steadied. Behind us, the town breathed. It took another step into the light. Now I could see it more clearly. Not perfect. Features slightly blurred, like a photograph taken mid-motion. Hands a little too still. Eyes too focused, as if afraid to blink. Practice stage. Early. "You stayed," it said. "Yes." Why? The question wasn't accusatory. It was genuine. I felt something loosen in my chest. Because someone had to choose it, not be forced, not be replaced. It tilted its head. The motion was clumsy, untrained. "Does it hurt?" it asked. I thought of my mother's tired smile, the way the house had exhaled when she left. "No," I said, "not like before." Another step. Now it stood fully in the porch light. The town leaned in. "What happens to me?" it asked. That question carried weight, not just for it, but for everything listening. I chose my words carefully. "You learn," I said, "but you don't copy, you don't steal, you don't fill gaps." A pause. "You wait until someone chooses." The porch light brightened. The thing nodded slowly. I could almost see the moment something fundamental shifted. The rule rewrote itself. A sound echoed from Main Street. Not footsteps, voices. Low, confused, curious. The town was reacting. Mrs. Calder's porch light turned on across the street. Then another, then another. Not alarms, acknowledgments. The thing flinched. "Too much?" I asked. "Yes," it admitted. "Then stay here," I said. "You don't need to be seen yet." It stepped back, just outside the brightest edge of the light. Still visible, still real. From down the road, someone approached. Human footsteps, uneven, rushed. I recognized the sound before I saw the figure. A young man, early 20s, backpack slung over one shoulder, phone in hand, screen dark. Confusion etched across his face. He stopped when he saw me. "Hey," he said, "is this Gray Ridge?" "Yes," I replied. Relief washed over him. Thank God. My GPS just looped me back here 3 times. I thought I was losing my mind. I smiled gently. "You're not." He glanced past me toward the porch light, then toward the shadows beside it. His eyes lingered a second longer than comfort allowed. "Is someone else here?" he asked. I followed his gaze. The thing hadn't moved, hadn't hidden. That was new. "Yes," I said, "but they're not ready to talk yet." The young man nodded slowly, accepted it without understanding. That was important too. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course." "Did you ever feel like this place was watching you?" I considered lying. Then I remembered my promise to myself. "Yes," I said, "but it doesn't have to watch anymore. Not like before." He swallowed. "I was thinking of staying," he admitted, "just for a bit. Something about this town feels quiet." Behind me, the thing stiffened. I raised my hand slightly. It stayed still. "You can stay," I said to the young man. "Only if you want to. Only if you choose it." He frowned. "What happens if I leave?" "Nothing," I replied. The town held its breath. "If you leave, you leave." A subtle shudder passed through the ground. Not anger, adjustment. The young man looked around again, at the houses, the lights, the road behind him. "I think," he said slowly, "I'd like to sleep on it." "That's wise," I said. He smiled, grateful. "Do you live here?" he asked. "Yes." "For a long time?" I glanced toward the shadow beside the porch light. "As long as I choose to," I replied. He nodded, satisfied. As he walked toward the diner, the town released its breath. The thing stepped forward again. "You changed it," it said. "Yes." "Will it break?" "No," I said. "It will learn." It looked at his hands. They were steadier now. From somewhere deep beneath us, something old shifted. Not awake, not asleep, accepting. The porch light dimmed slightly, not fading, balancing. I sat on the steps and gestured for the thing to sit beside me. It hesitated, then did. The wood didn't creak under its weight. That felt symbolic. "What do I call you?" it asked. I thought about that. Names had power here. "Not yet," I said. "Names come after choice." It nodded. Patient. The clock tower chimed in the distance. 1, 2, 3, 4. The sound carried differently now. Not a warning, a marker. I leaned back and looked up at the sky. Stars had begun to appear. Not many,
but more than before. "That's new," the thing said. "Yes," I replied. "The town is learning how to let go." Silence settled around us, not empty, peaceful. From the edge of town, another presence stirred, different, curious. The cycle wasn't ending, it was changing, and this time I was here to guide it, not as a guard, not as a prisoner, but as someone who remembered and chose to stay. The porch light stayed on, not because it had to, because someone might need it.
The porch light cast a longer shadow now, not because it grew brighter, but because the night had leaned closer to it. I felt the shift in my bones first, a gentle pressure, like the moment before rain when the air decides what it's going to do. The town wasn't resisting anymore. It was adjusting its weight around a new rule, testing where it could rest without cracking. Beside me, the thing, no, not a thing, not anymore, sat with its hands folded, eyes fixed on the street. It wasn't copying my posture. It had chosen its own version of stillness. That mattered more than I expected. From the direction of Main Street, a door closed, then another. Not hurried, not afraid, just settled. The diner lights dimmed slightly, moving from open bright to late evening soft. Someone laughed briefly, then stopped, as if realizing they didn't need to keep proving anything. "You feel that?" it said. "Yes," I replied. "It's finding a balance." "What happens if it doesn't?" the presence asked. I didn't answer right away. That silence was also part of the lesson. "It will," I said finally. "It always does. The question is what it becomes in the process." The wood beneath us was cool, solid, real. For years, the house had felt like a suggestion more than a structure, as if it could decide not to be there if it was offended. Now it felt grounded, almost stubborn, like it intended to remain. A sound drifted from the trees, not footsteps, breathing, slow, deep, unpracticed. The presence beside me tensed. "Not you," I said quietly. "You don't need to hide." The breathing continued, unbothered by being noticed. Something else was waking up. Not a copy, not a replacement, a remainder. The forest edge darkened, not uniformly this time. Shadows moved independently, testing their own shapes. One stepped forward, just enough for me to see the outline of shoulders, a head, arms held close to a body that wasn't sure it deserved space yet. It didn't speak. Neither did I. This wasn't a moment that benefited from language. The presence beside me leaned forward slightly, curiosity overriding caution. The new shape noticed and froze, like a startled animal. "It's okay," I said, projecting calm more than volume. The words landed gently, settling into the space between us. The shape shifted just a little, closer. The town exhaled. I felt it ripple through the ground, up the porch steps, into my chest. For the first time since I was a child, the sensation wasn't heavy. It was relieved. "Why are there more now?" the presence asked. "Because the town doesn't have to rush anymore. It doesn't have to fill gaps the second they appear. It can wait, see who stays, see who leaves." "And if no one chooses?" the presence asked. "Then nothing happens, and that's okay too." The shape at the tree line took another step forward. Its outline sharpened slightly, not perfect, but intentional. It was learning by observing, not stealing. That was new. A porch light flicked on down the street, then another. Not all of them, just enough to create a soft path through the dark. A suggestion, not a command. The young man from earlier stepped out of the diner, rubbing his hands together against the cold. He spotted me and raised a hand in a tentative wave. I returned it. He hesitated, then approached, stopping a few steps short of the porch. His eyes moved, taking in the presence beside me, then drifting toward the tree line. He saw more than he should have, or maybe more than people used to allow themselves to see here. "Is everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "better than okay." He nodded slowly, as if testing that idea in his mouth. "I think I'll stay tonight, just tonight." "That's fine," I replied. "You don't owe the town anything." Behind me, the presence straightened. I felt the question before it asked. "Does he know?" it whispered. "No," I said softly, "and he doesn't need to. Choice only matters if it's clean." The young man smiled, relieved, and turned back toward the diner. His footsteps were light, unburdened. When the door closed behind him, the town didn't tighten around the absence. It let him go. That was the difference. The shape at the tree line stepped fully into view now. Not human, not, something in between, but leaning toward becoming rather than replacing. Its eyes reflected the porch light in a way that suggested curiosity, not hunger. It raised a hand, an awkward gesture, a greeting. I returned it. The presence beside me watched, something like wonder crossing its features. "You didn't teach me that," it said. "No," I replied. "I didn't have to." The new shape took another step, then stopped as if waiting for permission that no longer existed. "You can sit if you want," I said. It considered that, then lowered itself on the edge of the porch, careful not to touch either of us. The wood didn't protest. 3 of us now. Not a replacement, not a cycle, a beginning. From beneath the town, something old shifted again, deeper this time, not resisting, not fighting, making room. The clock tower chimed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I felt the presence beside me stiffen. "That's never happened," it said. "No," I agreed, "it hasn't." The 5th chime lingered longer than the others, then faded without consequence. No alarms, no tension, just a marker placed gently into the night. The rules were changing, not breaking, growing. I leaned back, resting my hands on the porch behind me. The sky overhead had opened further, stars scattered unevenly now, imperfect in a way that felt earned. The presence followed my gaze. "It's bigger than I thought," it said. "Yes," I replied, "and it always was." Silence settled again, but this time it was shared, chosen, the kind of quiet that didn't demand to be filled. From the tree line, the shape let out a slow breath, then another, practicing being present, not being someone else. "Will they come back?" it asked. "Some will, some won't. Memory is strange like that. But if they do, the town won't pull them in anymore. And if they want to stay, then they stay, as themselves." The presence beside me nodded, absorbing the weight of that. "I think," it said carefully, "I'd like to learn to be just one." I smiled. "That's the hardest part, and the most important." The porch light hummed, steady and patient. Not a signal anymore, an invitation. And for the first time, the town didn't lean toward it out of need. It waited, because it knew now, waiting was no longer the same as starving.
The waiting didn't feel empty. It felt held. The kind of pause that exists between breaths when neither inhale nor exhale is desperate to arrive. Gray Ridge had learned how to rest inside that space, and the difference was subtle but profound. The ground no longer vibrated with anticipation. The air no longer leaned forward, searching for something to copy. Beside me, the presence shifted its weight, testing the porch boards beneath it. The movement was careful, but not afraid. It was learning consequence, not punishment. The newer shape, still half shadow, half intent, watched closely, not mimicking, observing, storing the idea of balance rather than the shape of it. "That feeling," it said slowly, voice still rough at the edges. "Is that what being yourself is like?" I considered the question. "It's part of it, the quiet part, the part before you decide what to do next.
It nodded, as if that explanation fit somewhere inside it. Down the street, a window opened. Someone leaned out, took a breath of night air, then closed it again. No tension followed the sound, no ripple of reaction, just a life adjusting itself and moving on. The presence beside me noticed. It didn't react, it said. No, I replied, because it didn't need to. That answer seemed to settle something. For years, maybe longer than years, Grey Ridge had treated every movement as a potential loss, every absence as a wound that needed immediate filling. Now, absence was just space, and space could exist without being punished. A faint hum rose beneath the porch, not mechanical, not organic, something structural shifting, like the town's foundation resettling after a long imbalance. It wasn't uncomfortable. If anything, it felt like relief traveling upward. The newer shape leaned forward, placing its hands on the porch boards. Its fingers flexed, uncertain, then steadied. When it spoke again, its voice carried less echo. "I don't feel pulled," it said. The presence beside me tilted its head. "Pulled where?" "Anywhere," the shape replied. Before, it felt like gravity that didn't come from the ground, like something inside me was always leaning away from itself. I exhaled slowly. "That's what copying feels like," I said. "You're never fully where you are." The shape absorbed that in silence. The porch light dimmed another fraction, adjusting itself to the night rather than fighting it. It no longer needed to announce anything. It was simply there. From farther down Birch Lane, footsteps approached again, different from before, slower, familiar in a way that made my chest tighten before I could place why. I stood. The presence beside me did the same a half-second later, not because it was copying, but because it sensed the shift in my posture. A woman emerged from the darkness, not my mother. Older than the young man, younger than Mrs. Calder. Her coat was worn, her hands tucked deep into her pockets. She stopped when she saw us, eyes scanning the porch, the light, the shapes gathered there. She didn't look frightened. She looked tired. "I thought I was done with this place," she said quietly. The town did not react. That was important. "I left years ago, packed up, moved 3 states away, built a life." Her eyes flicked to the presence beside me, then to the newer shape on the porch edge. "And then," she said, "I started dreaming." The word carried weight, but not threat. About street signs changing. The presence inhaled sharply. I held up a hand, steadying. "I didn't pull you back," I said. "You came on your own." She nodded. I needed to know if it was still hungry. I thought about how to answer. "It isn't," I said. "Not anymore." She searched my face for signs of deception, found none. "And if I stay?" she asked. "That's your choice, but you won't be replacing anyone, and no one will replace you." The newer shape leaned forward slightly, curiosity brightening its outline. The woman noticed. "That one's new," she said. "Yes," I replied. She smiled faintly. "Good," she said. "About time something new happened here." She didn't step onto the porch, not yet. She stayed where she was, holding her distance with intention rather than fear. "I don't think I'll stay tonight," she said after a moment, "but I'm glad I came." "That's enough," I said. She nodded once, then turned back toward the road. Her footsteps moved away, unhurried. When she reached the edge of the light, she paused. "Hey," she called softly, without turning around. "Yes?" "Whatever you did, keep doing it." Then she was gone. The town did not close around the absence. It let her leave. The presence beside me released a breath it hadn't realized it was holding. "It remembered," it said. "Yes," I replied, and she chose. The newer shape watched the road long after the woman disappeared. "It thinks," it said slowly, "that I would like to remember things too, but only if they're mine." I smiled. That's exactly how it works. Another hum traveled through the ground, softer this time, affirming. From beneath Grey Ridge, the old presence, the deep structure that had once enforced the rules without question, shifted again, not retreating, not advancing, making room for something lighter to sit alongside it. The clock tower chimed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The sound echoed farther than before, rolling out past the tree line, into the fields beyond town. It didn't snap back like it used to. It traveled. The presence beside me looked at the tower, then back at me. "It's letting the sound go," it said. "Yes," I replied, "because it doesn't need to keep everything anymore." The newer shape stood carefully this time, testing its balance on the porch boards. When it turned to face us, its outline was sharper, still imperfect, still forming, but undeniably singular. "I don't want to be many," it said. "I want to be one." The words landed with quiet finality. "That's all anyone ever wants," I said. It nodded. Then, tentatively, it sat closer, not touching, but no longer separate. 3 presences, sharing space without consuming it. From somewhere deep within the town, something like a memory loosened, not released, refiled, placed somewhere it wouldn't press so hard against the present. The porch light hummed, steady, content, and Grey Ridge, no longer starving, no longer afraid of its own emptiness, waited, not because it had to, because waiting, at last, felt safe.